Welcome to worship with Sabbath Streams Ministries. Our desire is to provide for a spirit-filled, Messianic-style worship experience. We hope you are blessed by today's service.
The waters of life, and I will be like a tree planted by the water. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter, springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin, peace that endureth, thine own near presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. The month of Adar is the month of Purim, and the story of Purim is a story that shows us the hidden hand of God, but it still is showing us the hand of God and how God moves to redeem his people. How God moves to redeem his people. And the whole month is about that He is the God who redeems His people. Let's do Shomer. All of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, yeah, Shomer, that's it. Shomer Israel. I have to find it. There it is. Keeper of the flock. Keeper of the flock of Israel. Shomer Israel, keeper of the flock, keeper of the flock of Israel. Shomer Israel, keeper of the flock, keeper of the flock of Israel. Praise your holy name. Melech Israel, King above all kings, let your kingdom reign. Adonai, Melech Israel, King above all kings, let your kingdom reign. Adonai, Shema Israel. God of redemption, God of restoration. Same thing, right? In a sense, redemption leads to restoration, and yeah. You are the God of hope. You are the God of justice. You are the God of healing, the only God who hears. You are the God of hope. You are the God of justice. You are the God of healing, To the God of restoration we now sing. You are the God of hope. You are the God of justice. You are the God of healing, the only God who hears. You are the God of hope. You are the God of justice. You are the God of healing, the only God who hears. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, and the Lord will breathe new life into this land as we worship Him and take a righteous stand. And the Lord will rise with healing in His wings. To the God of restoration we now sing. Holy, holy, you are holy. Holy, holy, you are holy. Righteous, 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 you are righteous. Righteous, righteous, you are righteous. And the Lord will breathe. And the Lord will breathe new life into this land as we worship Him and take a righteous stand. And the Lord will rise with healing in His wings. To the God of restoration we now sing. You are the God of hope. You are the God of justice. You are the God of healing, the only God who hears. And as the theme of Adar is increasing our joy, yeah, we know that God's hidden hand is at work. And because we know His hidden hand is at work, we can increase our joy. I'm going to go ahead and do the house of the Lord again. That it's such a wonderful song anymore. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Sometimes we have to work at it, right? Sometimes we have to just say, Lord, I'm going to be joyful, even if it kills me, right? That's what it feels like some days, but we worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened prison doors, parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. We worship the God who was. We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Oh, oh. We shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause he hung upon the cross, he rose up from the grave. My God, he's still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. Oh, oh, oh. We shout out your praise. We were the beggars. 'Cause we were the beggars. Now we're royalty. We were the prisoners. Now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by his grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. We were the beggars. Now we're royalty. We were the prisoners. Now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by his grace. Let the house of the Lord sing his praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We'll shout out your praise. Oh, oh. We'll shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. I love it. Now we have 2 cowbells in the house. Yay! Yeah. More cowbell, right? You know, there's Craig said we sing this song, and he's absolutely right. We sing this song, and it says we'll shout out your praise. And we're going, there's joy in the house, Lord. We'll shout out your praise. We'll shout out your praise, you know, and it's hard to sing and you shout at the same time. So I like the idea of shouting on the word praise. Well, shout out your praise, right? I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. I have some verses for tonight. I have marked them in the Bible up there, and I thought I had 8 verses, but it looks like I have a few more than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, maybe it is just 8. That would be fine. And there's 3 of you, so you can figure out how to do it, right?
Okay.
And I have marked them up there. I just think it's a good idea to have more than my voice.
Okay.
You know, when you listen to one person's voice for too long, you start
Can you get it?
blocking it out.
Okay.
Had a message from my daughter. I wanted to make sure it wasn't an emergency. And it wasn't. Oh, man. It's good to be back in Klamath, maybe. I'm not sure sometimes. We have been feeling anxious since we got back. I don't understand that, but it is what it is. And so I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to say we're not. I'm just going to say we have this anxious feeling. And maybe, honestly, maybe it is related to the month that we're in. Now that I look at this, now that I think about it, we're in the month of Adar, the primary Adar. It's Adar 2 or Adar Bit, if you're looking at it, because we are in a calendar year that has the extra month. This is the last month, counting from Nisan. It's the 12th month or the 13th month, depending on your year. And this year it's a 13th month. Which, by the way, in Jewish culture and understanding, 13 is a number of blessing. You know, like the baker's dozen. You know, you get the 12 and then you get a blessing, an extra. And that's the way they see the number 13. It's that one extra, that, you know? Like the tribes, there's 12 tribes, but really there's the extra, the 13, when you add Levi and you separate Joseph. Anyway, so it's supposed to be good mazel tov, good. Luck really isn't the right word, although there isn't an English word for mazel. It really has to do with blessing, with, it's not just luck. It's God's providence, being a good providence. Mazel, good mazel, mazel tov, good providence of God be yours. This last month, counting from Nisan in the liturgical year, if we're counting from Tishri, Rosh Hashanah, it's halfway through the legal year. But this is the last month of the year because we're supposed to count the months from the beginning of Aviv, which is next month. So, counting months. And it has begun. Today is actually the first day of Adar. It began last night, so technically we're a little late with our Rosh Chodesh, but it is what it is. This month is called a pregnant month. We talked about that last time when I talked about the extra Adar. It's a pregnant month. It births an extra month every 7 times in a 19-year cycle, it says. Don't try to figure it out. The greater minds than mine have done that. But it keeps the lunar calendar in sync with the proper seasons so that we celebrate Passover in the spring like we're supposed to. So that's what its focus is. It's a preparation and a setting up for making sure Passover is celebrated correctly. And in fact, in ancient Israel, sometimes the second month was added simply because there had been too much rain, there had been too much damage to the roads from the weather, and they knew good and well that people were not going to be able to make it all the way to Jerusalem for the Passover, so they would add the extra month to give them the extra time to fix the roads and to have it ready, and so that the right crop, would be at the right time. It is written, as soon as Adar begins, increase your joy. It's not written as a suggestion. It's written as a command. As soon as Adar begins, increase your joy. It's a command. Now, how can we be commanded to do something with our emotions? Is a little beyond me in some ways, right? But we can. It's like we are commanded to love. Are we always going to feel love towards the person we're supposed to act in love towards? Not necessarily. Sometimes you're really not feeling it. But you have to behave and act with love, regardless of what your feelings are. The same thing with joy. We may not feel the joy, but there is a truth that we can increase our joy by behaving in joy, by doing joyful things. It has been stated, and I actually heard this on the radio this last week. We were driving back and forth to California, and we were listening to Caleb, and they were doing the talking and whatever. And I heard one of the DJs say that studies have shown that if you want to feel better, make yourself smile. Make yourself smile. Do your best in a relaxed smile, going into a full smile. Not the not that one that we do when someone points a camera at you. Go, no. That's ugly face. A relaxed smile, and then increase the smile. Smile. It naturally, somehow or another, by the facial movements, increases the endorphins in our body, which causes us to feel better. Okay? So there's a command to increase our joy, increase in joy. And one of the reasons for that is that this month we celebrate what is the most joyful of festivals. The most joyous festival, the raucous festival, the fun festival. The festival of Purim, which is one of my favorites. There's the commanded festivals that are nice, that are wonderful. And then there's the two added of Hanukkah and Purim. And I love Hanukkah. It's so fun to spin the dreidel. It's fun to play the games. It's fun to watch the candles burn. There's something really warming about that. But Purim is just flat fun. And we try to make it fun here. This month we will celebrate Purim. And by the way, Purim is always exactly 1 month before Passover. So when we celebrate Purim, recognize that Passover is only a month away. Yeah. Purim is March 16th, by the way, which is a Wednesday night. We'll be here at 6:30. I don't have all the plans yet, but we always do certain things, like read the story of Esther and boo for Haman and cheer for Mordecai and for Esther and all that silly fun stuff. So we'll be doing some of that, celebrating Purim.
Bob's got a blowhorn.
What?
Bob has a blowhorn.
Bob has a blowhorn? Oh, perfect. You'll have to bring it. Oh, yeah. Making noise when we say amen, so that you can't hear the name, right? Because we're supposed to blot his name out. But the reality is that as Elul is spent in preparing for Rosh Hashanah, and we do that here, we prepare our hearts for the new year in the month of Elul. Adar is a month for preparing for Passover. And Purim, and the celebration of Purim, is a part of that preparation. We are preparing for redemption. Preparing for redemption. Who has Esther 9? Got 2 parts of Esther 9 marked over there. I've asked some people to come and read so that you don't have to just listen to my voice on the video. Esther chapter 9, verses 20 through 22, and then verses 27 through 28.
Then Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews who were in the provinces of King Ahasuerus,
That guy.
both near and far, obliging them to celebrate the 14th day of the month Adar and the 15th day of the same month annually, because on those days the Jews rid themselves of their enemies, and it was a month which was turned for them from sorrow into gladness, and from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and rejoicing, and sending portions of food to one another, and gifts to the poor. And then 27, the Jews established and made a custom for themselves, and for their descendants, and for all those who allied themselves with them, so that they would not fail to celebrate these 2 days, according to their regulation and according to their appointed time annually. So these days were to be remembered and celebrated throughout every generation, every family, every province, every city, and these days of Purim were not to fail from among the Jews, or their memory fade from their descendants.
Okay. 2 things. If you want to know how to celebrate Purim, look at verse 22 where it says, these are to be days of feasting, celebrating, sending presents of food to one another, and giving gifts to the poor. Okay? So those are the 4 things that we're supposed to do for Purim. We're supposed to celebrate, we're supposed to feast, we're supposed to send presents to each other, and give gifts to the poor. Those are the primary things. Now, the other thing about Purim is that anyone can enjoy it. In verse 27, it established upon themselves, upon their descendants, and all who joined them, that they would commemorate these days. So anyone who wants to join with them in fighting for their deliverance is welcome to join with them in celebrating the deliverance of God. So it's open to all. I love that. Now, I've had people say, well, Purim isn't a biblical festival. My question is Esther or part of the Bible or not? I realize that we're not going to find Hanukkah anywhere in the scriptures except for where it says Jesus was in the temple for the festival and it was winter, and there aren't any winter festivals except Hanukkah. I mean, so that's a kind of a figuring it out. But Esther is in the Bible, and it was taken upon the Jews, and Mordecai wrote it down, and Esther signed the decrees, and they sent it out, and these days of Purim are established, and they're in the book. The month of Adar was intended for destruction and grief, and God turned it into victory and joy. The word Adar is related to the Hebrew word used for the word strength, which is Adir. I may not be pronouncing it right, so forgive me if I'm not. But it's spelled A-D-I-R in the transliteration, Adir. So Adar, Adir. They're related to each other. And that is the word for strength. So this is a month for strength, for finding strength, for walking in strength, for looking to our God to be our strength. Also, Adar can be translated as a word that means exalted, as a word that means praised, as a word that means power, as a word that means mighty. These are aspects of God. God is exalted, He is powerful, He is mighty, and He is to be praised. These are aspects of God, and so it's a good month to look and see those qualities about God, and honestly to use the praise that we give to our exalted, mighty, powerful God in order to increase our strength. One of the verses that God has brought to us in this last month and last couple weeks, I think even, just a couple weeks, is the verse where Paul says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And in that all things, he's not writing or talking about following the commandments. He's not writing or talking about doing public speaking, which a lot of people are afraid of. He's not writing or talking about building a house or something hard, physically hard. He's talking and writing about the circumstances he found himself in, and they were not good. He was abused, he was beaten, he was thrown in prison, he was accused of crimes he didn't commit, all of these things. He was impoverished and he was wealthy. There was the two sides, because he came from a wealthy family, so there was wealth in the family to be accessed, but everything was taken away from him on his trips more than once. Paul said, I have learned to be content in whatever state I am in, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So if we're looking to God for our strength, we recognize that He is the one that strengthens us. He is the one that allows us to go through a month like the month of Adar, which is intended for destruction and grief, because that was the intent of Haman. At the time of Esther, this was a time when the people were discouraged. They were held in a captivity that they knew they had earned. They knew why they were in captivity. They were in captivity for their idolatry. They were in captivity because they did not honor God in the way they treated each other. They were in captivity because of their idolatry. They knew they'd earned it. The prophets had told them they would be going into captivity if they didn't turn. They knew they didn't turn. The prophets said, there you go. And they were taken off. And God purified them in that season. But They felt like they had earned this. But understand that even in a time of, quote, punishment, because that's what they were feeling, even in this time of punishment, God did not abandon them. Let me repeat that. God did not abandon them, nor will he abandon us. Even if we deserve it, or we think we deserve it, or that situation we find ourselves in is difficult, something that maybe we think we have earned or whatever, it's really important for us to remember that God will not abandon us. He has not forsaken us. He has not forgotten us. And he will not. Even when we don't see his hand moving. Now, a lot of the people at Esther's time, God had already sent the people of Israel back to Egypt. Back to Jerusalem. Oh, man, don't say that. They were not supposed to go back to Egypt. God had already told them to go back to Jerusalem. It was time to go back to Jerusalem, and groups went back to Jerusalem. But large groups did not. They had become comfortable in their captivity in Babylon. They had become comfortable where they were. They had bought houses and lands. They were working. They enjoyed it. There was prosperity. Even in their captivity, there was a prosperity there. And so when God said, go back and fight for the land again, they didn't. So here we are in the middle of this. They could have been back in Jerusalem, and they weren't. But even in all of that, God was at work. He was at work behind the scenes, preparing for their protection, preparing for their prosperity, their real prosperity, preparing for them to be fully delivered, preparing for their good. Now, the enemy often sees our hard times as opportunity for destruction, right? He would like nothing more than to see us be destroyed. And so when we're going through hard times, he wants to take advantage of that by convincing us we're going to be destroyed, for one thing, or by trying to use them in ways that hard time, that strenuous situation, that difficulty, as a way for destruction. Okay, just Haman planned for the death of the Jewish people. But God was at work. And deliverance was being prepared behind Haman's back. And our deliverance is being prepared behind the enemy's back. As Passover in the next month shows us deliverance through miraculous, external, grandiose events. You know, the Nile River turning into blood is not a little thing. It's big, it's visible, everybody sees it. This big miraculous hand of God, which is what a lot of us want to see all the time. But Purim shows us deliverance through that hidden hand of God, the quiet hand of God, that hand of God that is active in everyday life and in the choices of heroic people, even in the midst of potential disaster. This year we are looking at and we are seeing things happen in the world at large that are pretty devastating, or can be pretty devastating. I have a friend whose son is a director of, I think he's got 4 orphanages that he is director of through an organization in the Ukraine. He has talked about what is going on there. He has talked about how, looking around at what's happening, how difficult it is. How do you take care of children who don't understand? Because a lot of the children in the orphanage are children who are what we would call special needs kids. They don't have the developmental ability. You can't really just talk to them and explain it to them, and not just their age-wise, but with other reasons too. I have heard it said that this is the month of Adar, this is the month of Purim, where we can look at this situation. We know who Haman is, right? It's pretty easy to see who Haman is, the one who is bent fully on destruction, doesn't care about which people are killed, including his own soldiers. Have you recognized Mordecai in the president of the Ukraine, who, by the way, happens to be Jewish, who is standing up and fighting and standing up and speaking truth and standing up and staying with his people where he belongs? I'm waiting for Esther to be revealed in this story. I really am. We don't get to see it that broadly or that big of a picture of it in every month, every year. You know, we don't see it that way. But God does. God knows. God knows that there are heroic people that are standing up in difficult circumstances. And it may not look like a miracle to us, but it truly is a miracle that they are able to do what they are doing. Even hidden miracles of God will bring deliverance through his people. And we can, in all of that, look for his hidden miracles in our lives. In the everyday business of our lives, we look for them, and when we see them, we thank him for them. And in thanking him for them, we're acknowledging him. And in acknowledging him, we are doing what we need to do to increase our joy. We increase our joy through praise, through thanksgiving, through smiling and saying, God, you are a good God. You always have been. You always will be. I don't know what you're doing, but I trust you, and I believe you are doing something. And we look for what he's doing. Adar, by the way, is the month that Moses was born. His birthday is in the month of Adar. Haman didn't know that. What Haman knew was Adar is the month that Moses died. You see, he died on the anniversary of his birth. It is said that great rabbis, great prophets, great men of God die on the day that they're born, which is an interesting thing. They get all of that because Moses died on the day he was born. He died on the anniversary of his birth. I'll put it that way. It's a better way to say it. And they celebrated him and the anniversary of his death every year. Haman knew that. But he did not know that that was also the day of his birth. And so what they were celebrating was that dual place, that place that their greatest prophet that they knew, their greatest deliverer that they had, was born on this day. This is the day they celebrated him. Haman didn't see it that way. So he tried to take advantage of what he thought was a sad event. And it wasn't. On this day, after Moses died, the leadership for Israel was transferred to Joshua, and all of that was a preparation so the people could enter the promised land. So the people could enter the promised land. It was all a preparation for entering into the promise, and our lives are a preparation for entering into the promise. The tribe that's recognized this month is the tribe of Naphtali. And the way of or Naphtali, depending on how you want to pronounce it, Naphtali. One way of reading his name separates it into two words, which mean sweetness to me, and I think that's what Janie has up on the wall, is sweetness to me, as a part of the name for Naphtali. Yeah. Of course, that's not the original meaning of his name. That's a breakdown of similar names, of similarities, similar words. The original meaning of his name is actually found in Genesis 30, 1 through 8. Who has Genesis 30, 1 through 8? I didn't really look at what she has on the wall.
I noticed it has a deer.
Huh?
Has a deer.
Has the deer, yeah.
Not Adar, but a deer.
We'll find that. We will find the deer in the blessing. In the blessing. Genesis 30, 1 through 8 tells the story of his birth and what his name meant to his mother.
Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children, or else I die." Then Jacob's anger burned against Rachel, and he said, "I am in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb." She said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, that she may bear on my knees, that through her I too may have children." So she gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went in to her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me, and has indeed heard my voice, and has given me a son." Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. So Rachel said, "With mighty wrestling I have wrestled with my sister, and I have indeed prevailed." And she named him Naphtali.
So the name Naphtali means basically with strong wrestling, with mighty wrestling, obtained by fighting. She had wrestled with her sister and thought she won. Naphtali is Jacob's sixth son, Bilhah's second. Okay, so first of all, Leah has children. She has Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. And then Rachel is looking at this and feeling very competitive because she doesn't have children. And it was considered a sign of judgment to not have children in that culture. And so she wanted her husband to give her a son, give her a child. And he's like, "I'm not God. I'm not God." So she gives him Bilhah. You know, a surrogate mother was the idea. Bilhah stays a servant of Rachel all of her life. She's not given the status of a wife, actually. Although she bears two sons for Jacob, she bears, first of all, Dan, which means judge, and then she bears this one, Naphtali. And Rachel felt like in the birthing of the second child that she had won something. This competition with her sister, she was finally getting somewhere. Now, it's interesting that we have no record of anything that this young man, the son, Naphtali, ever did or didn't do. He is not named again, except in the blessings, and except as a tribe later. We don't know what he was involved in and what he wasn't involved in because it's not mentioned. He's not there. Well, kind of like in the book of Esther, God's name is never mentioned, but he's there. Naphtali is not mentioned directly again either, but we know he was there with his brothers. He was there for the blessing of the father, Genesis 49:21, and this is where we will see the deer, Genesis 49:21. It's just one verse.
Naphtali is a doe, let loose, he gives beautiful words.
A doe set loose who gives beautiful words. That's the translation you have there? Yeah, Naphtali is a doe let loose who offers words of beauty. It's what mine says. Genesis 49:21 is translated very differently in different translations because that last phrase is one that is kind of not fully understood maybe. Naphtali is a hind let loose, so it's a deer. a wild deer. A deer runs free, a hind or a doe, depending on which translation. It says, Naphtali is a hind let loose. He gives goodly words. That's the American Standard Version. Naphtali, you are a wild deer with lovely fawns, is another version, the CEV version. Good News Bible says, Naphtali is a deer that runs free who bears lovely fawns. So there's this place of Naphtali is a deer that has beautiful babies, beautiful little fawns. But in most translations and in most of the older ones, the Jewish publications, it says he is a hind who gives good words, godly words, or words of beauty. One version even says Naphtali is a free-running deer who produces eloquent literature. Eloquent literature is beautiful words. Beautiful words are supposed to come from Naphtali, from this tribe, which is kind of an interesting concept, especially since he was born out of wrestling and competition.
And you get like a free spirit poet type
Free spirit poet type, yeah.
when you say it that way.
Yeah, it kind of sounds that way, doesn't it? But he's represented, as the flag shows, by a deer. By a deer, sometimes by, almost always, is that a buck or is that a doe? Or can you tell?
Looks like a doe on the picture.
Looks like a doe?
See horns.
Yeah, most of the time it's pictured as a doe, but sometimes it's a buck. Most of the time there's not horns. Once in a while there is. Antlers, I mean, not horns. There's a difference,
So
I
is
know.
a hind a buck?
Uh-huh. A hind is a male.
And then
A young male.
A stag is a buck.
A stag is the big male.
Yeah.
A buck. So, but a hind is a male. But a young one, I think. I could be wrong on that, but I should look it up, huh? But anyway, this is somewhat echoed in the blessing that Moses gives, which is a little bit different than this one. And it's in Deuteronomy 33:23. Who has that one?
Yeah.
Of Naphtali, he said, O Naphtali, satisfy with favor, and full of the blessing of the Lord, take possession of the sea and the south.
So Naphtali, satisfied with favor, full of blessing, possessing the sea and the south. They inherited and were given the possession of the south shore of Galilee, the sea in the south. They were given choice, fertile, productive land, and they learned and they had to fight for that land and to keep that land. In the encampment, as we see on the wall over there, from what Janie's done there, they were set on the north of the tabernacle. Naphtali is above the tabernacle in that. She's got north is up, south is down. So it's Naphtali, Asher, and Dan. They camped together, and then they marched together, and they become the rear guard of the march when they were going to the Promised Land. As they camped, they were at the north, and as they picked up their tents and took off when they moved, they were at the back. They provided a protection at the rear of the march. Rear guards became fierce, strong in battle. When it was time to take the land, they already knew how to fight, because they'd had to fight off the Amalekites, and they'd have to fight off the ones that came up from behind and tried to take them out from behind. It was part of what they had to do, along with Dan and Asher, was that those people who were falling behind in the marching, they were supposed to pick them up and take care of them and move them back where they were supposed to be. When it's time to enter the land, they knew how to march, knew how to fight. And yet, they failed to take the land. No? They failed to drive out the prior inhabitants of the land. They chose instead to make them their servants, as Judges 1:33.
Judges. Naphtali did not drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh or the inhabitants of Beth Anath, but lived among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, and the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anan became forced labor for them.
So instead of driving them out, they made them their slaves, which was not a good thing. It was not a good thing. For those people who think the Bible supports slavery, no, it really does not. Yes, they became their forced slaves, and it cost the tribe of Naphtali a lot. During the time of Judges, though, Naphtali is mentioned as participating in the defense of Israel multiple times. When there was a war to be fought, Naphtali would provide soldiers for the war. They were good at it. In the season of Deborah, Barak, who is the warrior, the one who leads the army, he is a son of Naphtali. He is a warrior. He was to lead the army, which he did. He lost credit for the full victory because he didn't fully trust the word of the Lord. I believe that was confirmed through Deborah. Because when Deborah spoke to him, she says, "Has not the Lord said you are to go?" So she was confirming the word that God had already spoken to him. And because he then said, "I'm not going unless you go with me," it ended up that a woman was the one who took out the leader of the enemy's army. And yet, even with all this, he is listed as a hero of the faith. Who has Hebrews 11:32 through 34? The heroes of the faith. We used to call Hebrews chapter 11 the Hall of Faith. Hall of Faith, as God names people who were men and women of faith. Hebrews 11:32 through 34.
And what more shall I say? For time will fail me if I tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who by faith conquered kingdoms, performed acts of righteousness, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the judge of the sword, from weakness were made strong, became mighty in war, put foreign enemies to flight.
Mighty in war. He is listed as a man strong in battle. And as a group, sons of Naphtali were considered strong in battle. In the book of Judges, where Deborah sings her song of victory, she talks about the men of Naphtali risking their lives for the good of the others. They're willing to give up their lives for the purposes of God. In the scriptures, if there's an individual member of this tribe named, it is usually as a warrior or as a leader of the armies. Even those under Barak, those that were under David, those that were under Solomon. There were men of Naphtali who were part of David's mighty men. They were men who were said to have wisdom and cunning and strength. This month we're going to celebrate, and we look at the wisdom, the cunning, and the strength that we see in the tribe of Naphtali in the celebration of Purim. Even as Mordecai and Esther showed wisdom and cunning in what they did. And then when the people rose up against those who had sought to destroy them, they displayed their own strength in battle, and God gave them a victory. Shevat, the month that is before, means happy. We talked about that before. Adar 1, it says we begin to work and to build our joy. And in this month, we are to seek God's wisdom and let him give us strategies and cunning and the strength we need to turn sorrow into joy. Not just happiness, but joy. Joy is more important. Joy is the reward for men like the men of Naphtali, for those who are like Esther, for those who are like Mordecai, willing to risk their lives, love not their lives even unto death, but instead stand up for the rightness of God, stand up and fight for what God has said to do, and they do so with wisdom and cunning. It says, for us is given salvation and the power and the kingdom. Who has Revelation 12:10 and 11? Or is it 10 through 12? Revelation 12:10 and 11.
Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, he who accuses them before our God day and night. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony, and they did not love their life even when faced with death.
Okay. Now have come the salvation, the power, the kingdom, the authority of the Anointed One, to get rid of the accuser, right? And how does it say they overcame him? By the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. What is the word of our testimony? Well, look back at what it says about Naphtali. Beautiful words. Are not the most beautiful words those words of testimony? Those words of testimony of what God has done and what God is doing and what we know God will do. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the words, the beautiful words of their testimony. How beautiful are on the mountain are the feet of those who bring good news. The gospel, who bring the beautiful words that God delivers. God delivers. And how do we make sure that we can stay strong in this testimony? Hebrews 10:22 through 25. Yeah. I can tell I rode in a car a long time this week. Hebrews 10:22 through 25.
Oh, there it is. By the orange. Okay. Let us draw near with a sincere heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled clean from all evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together, as it is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near.
So this is how and what we do in order to maintain the strength, in order to build our joy, so we know that God is going to do it. You know, one of the reasons that we even celebrate the festivals and we go through the months and all of this is to help us see what God has done in the past. Because when we see what he has done in the past, we know what he can do in the future. And it helps us to remember that, to rehearse that, to be able to speak it, to see it, to know it. And that helps give us strength as we see God's victories. Helps us to be encouraged by his word. And his word is, do not despair. God is with us. Let God cleanse us. Let us hold the confession of hope. I hope and I pray and I know God. And hope is not just, oh, I hope this will happen. It's a, God, I'm hoping for, I am looking for, I am claiming your promises. Consider stirring each other up and to do good, to love and good deeds. And that's part of why we meet together too, so we can encourage each other, so we can pray for each other, so we can build each other's strength, especially as we see hard days approaching. And we see hard days approaching. We see hard days approaching. But we cannot despair. We are not to despair. God is with us. Victory is ours. I'm going to read something that I saw this week that somebody else wrote. I don't even know who it was, but I love the way they phrase this, so I'm just going to read it. In these unsettling times, we must replace what we do not know about the future with what we do know about God. Let me repeat that. We must replace what we do not know about the future with what we do know about God. Faith tells me that no matter what lies ahead of me, God is there. One thing I know for sure. My God is still in control. And for each one of us, it's time for us, if we're not already doing it, or if we are doing it, it's time for us to increase it. It's time for us to start standing on His word. It's time for the warriors of faith to rise and to war in the heavenlies, to pray, to go after what God wants us to go after. It is time to speak life into each other, not death. It is time for us to declare His promises, His truth. So step up, step out. Deborah's, Esther's, Barak, Mordecai, and all the rest. You are born for such a time as this. And we are being made for such a time as this. We are being made for such a time as this. The blessing of the month reads this: Lord our God, God of our fathers, make this coming month, the month of Adar, be one of good, of blessing. Grant us long life, a life of peace, of good, of blessing, of sustenance, of vigor, a life marked by a reverence for you and a dread of sin, a life free from shame and reproach, a life of prosperity and honor, a life in which the love of your word and the fear of you, O Lord, animate us, a life in which our heartfelt desires are fulfilled for good. May He who performed miracles for our fathers and liberated them from slavery to freedom, may He quickly liberate us and gather the exiles from the four corners of the earth, even all of Israel, and let us say, Amen. At the times of the rejoicing, the appointed feasts, and the new moon festivals, you are to sound the shofar over your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, and they will be a memorial before you, before your God. I am the Lord your God. And so we're going to pick up our shofars, and we're going to blow them. Are you able to blow a shofar tonight, Craig? Okay, good.
Can I get one?
Oops, I just kicked the mic stand. Oh, well, right. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with your commandments and has instructed us to hear the voice of the shofar. together one last time. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this season. Happy are the people who know the sound of the shofar and who walk in the light of your countenance, O Lord. O Lord, in this way shall we walk. Amen. And I will be like a tree planted by the
We hope you've enjoyed and been blessed by today's service. We gladly welcome all who are interested in learning about the roots of our faith to join us in person. We meet every Shabbat, Saturday at 10:30 a.m. in 3318 Maryland Avenue in Klamath Falls, Oregon. If you would like to join us in person and need directions or have a prayer request, please call us at 541-884-8307, send us an email to ministry@sabbathstreams.org, or mail us a letter. Our mailing address is Sabbath Streams Ministries, P.O. Box 1938, Klamath Falls, Oregon 97601. Sabbath Streams is a small ministry with a small budget but a big vision. If we have been a blessing to you, please consider blessing us with your financial support. Donations to this ministry are gladly accepted and are tax deductible. Sabbath Streams Ministries is registered in Oregon as a religious nonprofit organization. Visit us at www.sabbathstreams.org for more information. We look forward to seeing you again next week at Sabbath Streams Ministries. Until then, Shalom.